Hey, what it do, y'all? I'm your host, Will. Welcome to Fandom Frequency. If this is your first time joining us, we get into the entire multiverse of pop culture, whether that's Marvel, DC, horror, wrestling, anything in between. We get into it around here. So make sure you're clicking all the buttons below the video if you dig in the vibe, if you want to support the channel. It really does help us out immensely. And all of our new subscribers that have been coming in lately and all the new commenters and all the new engagement, really do appreciate y'all. Love getting into these discussions with y'all. Y'all been really loving the X-Men review series we've been doing for the live action side of things, leading up into Deadpool and Wolverine, aka Deadpool 3. So a lot of fun stuff to go, a lot of fun stuff to enjoy here on the channel. But for those of you joining us once again for our X-Men 97 recap / review, we're doing these every single week. It's been a blast, but we're going to be getting into episode 4 today, which is titled Motendo / Life Death Part 1. Life Death Part 1. And just getting into my overall thoughts here before we get into the recap portion of the episode. Not necessarily my favorite episode, but definitely still a very entertaining and fun episode for the series. We start off the first part of it, obviously, with the Motendo side, getting into Mojo Universe once again, and Siren and all that stuff, and bringing in Jubilee and Sunspot into this whole video game world and everything like that. I thought was pretty fun, and getting to harken back to like the X-Men 90s arcade game and some of the old school stuff like that, and getting to see some references to like Long Shot and different characters from the comics of that 90s era, and different even X Factor was shown at one point at Forge's place in the second half of the episode, the more life death part of everything. So I really enjoyed that, and it was still a really fun episode. It felt a little more fillerish towards the beginning because it's Jubilee's birthday and everything like that, and she ends up getting pulled into this whole Motendo adventure and whatnot, and Magneto wants them to do danger room drills as opposed to going out to an arcade to celebrate her 18th birthday, and all of that felt a little inconsequential. And obviously in an animated series, even with like a 8 to 10 episode run, they're definitely going to have some of those more chill episodes and take some time to kind of, character build or build out the characters of some kind of relationship or dynamic, and they definitely did that with Sunspot and Jubilee for sure, and I really enjoyed that vibe, that aspect of it, and getting to see Mojo come back and see it kind of brought back to life with the brand new animation harkening back to that 16-bit era was so fun, and the blend of new animation with that old school aesthetic has just been a blast throughout this whole episode. I mean, this whole season, and this episode is definitely no different. I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect as well. In the second half of the episode is where the more A plot or B plot, however you want to look at it, really kicks into high gear, because we're getting into the life death storyline that goes into Storm and Forge's relationship, and her dealing with the transition of truly seeing the value of herself without her powers, without her mutant abilities and everything like that, finding out that Forge was the one behind the entire design of the weapon that ended up taking her powers away to begin with, and he lied about it to get her to come with him in order to help her get the powers back, and the whole thing with him, falling hard for Storm and all that stuff, and the whole way that they're able to play the soap opera elements and bring the whole life-death storyline from the comics straight into the series flawlessly is so well done. I really enjoyed the second half of this episode, getting to see their dynamic between Storm and Forge, and getting to see their relationship start to come to fruition here, and getting to see all the dynamics play out. I thought was so well done, and seeing the changes up from the comics to where he was in a high rise in the comic books, actually. And in this version, he has just like a nice, more humble cabin. So I liked all the different choices they made with it here, and giving him more of the aesthetic we know him, with the ponytail and whatnot, as opposed to how he was more of like a dapper kind of look in the comics. So all that stuff really came to play. And Storm was pretty much just ripped right out of there, and everything was brought to life. And with the whole cliffhanger at the end of this episode, which we'll be picking up the following week, not this next week, but the following week right after that, 2 weeks from now, we're going to be picking up with the life-death part storyline with part 2. So I'm really, really intrigued to see where it goes. I never read the comic book storyline, but I'm aware of it, and I'm trying to collect that whole Chris Claremont to Jim Lee era of 70s to 90s comics. So I'm trying to get that whole era, that whole epic run right there. So that's all a big part of that, and one of Storm's most iconic storylines. So they really did a good job with that here. All the animation's top notch once again. All the voice acting is top notch once again. All the sound design is so cool in the way they're able to bring in those 16-bit gaming elements and sound cues, and the way that the characters are fading in and out with their life, and the whole health bar going down was just so well done and so well realized. I really, really dug that aspect of it for sure, and it was a fun episode. no doubt. But getting into some of the more recap portion of it, as we see Jubilee and Sunspot get sucked into this whole Motendo universe, if you will. They're going through all these different like previous episodes and adventures of the X-Men, whether that's Genosha way back in the day and things like that, or them dealing with the Sentinels right in the beginning when they get pulled in, pulling straight from the first episode of this particular season and series and the original series with Jubilee as well, and dealing with those dudes with the Sentinel arm blasters and everything from the first episode of this season. So tying in the original series with this was flawlessly done once again, and really really cool the way they did that. Getting the long shot cameo in the early intro and everything like that. And the intro did have a few different shots in there. I forgot to actually get into the one with like Jubilee defending long shot going against Mojo and everything like that. And I think there was another new shot with Magneto as well getting into action. And there was some new shots of like the Hellfire Club and things like that. So the intro did have some new shots in there. And I'm not sure if that was just harkening back with the Motendo aspect of this episode, or if that's teeing up other storylines to come in the rest of these episodes and everything like that. So I'm not sure. Tolerance's extinction is the big ending thing here, and I think that's also pulled from a pretty big storyline in the comics. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're playing out all these things, and whether these are just member berries or if these are truly going to be story elements to come in the rest of the season. It's going to be hella interesting to see how that plays out, but I definitely didn't want to get too far ahead of myself. I just remembered that. Wanted to highlight that. But as we keep going through the whole Motendo nostalgia trip, if you will, then they end up getting into contact with Mojo, and he breaks down what's going on. He's all like, oh yeah, I lost weight and all this shit, messing around like he always does, and just going into the whole fact of if you die in the game, you will die for real, and just messing and toying with him as he always does. And then ended up getting into contact with another version of Jubilee, straight up with the weird comic book accurate design. That's a whole different alternate design from a different run in the comics as well. I thought was super fun the way that she came in and helped out. And then you got the actual return of Siren, the character with the multiple arms that morphed into in the second episode, I believe. So, or was it the last episode? I think it was the third episode. My apologies. The last one. So really cool to see the way they're bringing all these elements continuously forward while harkening back and all that stuff. And then Sunspot ends up getting the shit knocked out of him when they get into the whole Magneto final boss portion of the game in Motendo universe. And that's obviously a reference to Nintendo, of course. For those of you youngins watching this maybe don't know, harkening back to that 16-bit era of the Super Nintendo 64 back in the mid-90s, early mid-90s. So, yeah. Never actually owned a Nintendo 64, by the way. My first gaming console was the PlayStation 1, the redo from right around 99, not the original 94, because I was barely born in 94. So didn't get the original PS1, but got the rebrand of that, and then got PS2 and so on and so forth. But anyways, getting back to the topic at hand here, back into the X-Men universe. And then, Jubilee ends up figuring out that if she goes with the pattern of the boss's movements and everything like that straight out of video games and attacks him when the time is right, she can defeat the digital version of Magneto, if you will, and end up saving Sunspot before he runs out of health and ends up dying for real. And she does so, just in fact. And then we end up transitioning back into the more main plot with the life-death part one side of the storyline. And I love the way that they even do it with the whole new title card in that portion of the episode for the last 5 to 10 minutes there of it. So really dug the way they were able to do that there for the last 10 minutes or so of this episode. And the way they're able to do so much storytelling in these 30 minutes has been very, very impressive for an animated series. Never feels completely too rushed, but definitely they can't take as much time as like an hour drama, so we all understand that. But really well done once again. And then getting to see the dynamic of Forge really kind of building this bond between him and Storm, and him going through the process of explaining what he went through in Vietnam and his backstory and what really shaped him into what's going on now, and him just trying to run a test run and see if he can actually give Storm her powers back and get it to work. She ends up trying to see if she can move the wind to call the weather to her, but it doesn't end up working. She steps into the booth or whatever. Nothing really happens, so they have to go back to the drawing board, and she ends up going for a little horseback ride for a little bit to try to feel the wind in her hair and feel that thrill that she misses so much from having her powers. And Forge and her go out on a horseback riding together and have a nice conversation and whatnot. But then he ends up revealing the truth to her, that he's the one that created the designs for this weapon that the government used to neutralize dangerous mutants, which he didn't. And of course, he did not ever mean to use it on the X-Men or anything like that. But Aurora is very pissed that he did that, and is saying that he should not have trusted the government whatsoever, no matter what his intentions were. But with his military background, with him being a veteran, of course he's going to see the government in a different way and have a different perspective, right? And maybe have something to gain or something to get out of the situation, or some kind of perk that he's going to get. So it's very interesting to see what's really the motivations there for Forge building the weapon and everything like that. But that's straight out of the comics too. So the way they were able to just adapt these storylines seamlessly in this series all the way back in the 90s run, and really almost even better now, is so awesome. So the way they're able to bring this conflict to the head, and with Storm essentially wanting to escape and get away, but then this crazy ass mystical demon thing pops up. So I don't know where that's going to go, but that's also straight from the comics. So we'll see where that ends up coming into play here in episode 6. But yeah, so overall, this was a pretty damn good episode, I can't lie. Second half was definitely stronger than the first half, but that's just because I'm such a huge Storm fan, and I'm more intrigued with that storyline more than Jubilee going into the Motendo universe with her little boyfriend, Sunspot, over there. So it's fun, it's cool, I like it, but we definitely, hopefully, are going to be getting into some much bigger stuff. And I did read the description of the next episode, so for those that don't want to know, you might want to get away for a minute. But thanks for watching and all that stuff if you don't want to get spoiled on that. But for those that don't care, spoiler alert, here we go. They're going to be getting into Genosha wanting to become part of the UN, and some big secrets and some big conspiracies coming to a head that are going to transition us into the 6th episode and beyond. So big stuff to come, I think, in this next episode. So they're definitely teeing us up for some big things to come. But you let me know what you thought about this episode down below in the comments. I always love discussing this stuff with y'all. Y'all have been coming through supporting these weekly reviews and recaps of the X-Men 97 series. So make sure you keep doing that. We're going to have the X-Men review series playlist right up there. So check out our live action reviews for all of those. We got the X-Men First Class quadrilogy, if you will, is going to be coming at y'all real soon throughout the rest of this month of April. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We got Invincible wrapping up this week, season 2. We're going to be covering that as well. And don't you be thinking I'm sleeping on Shogun, the live action series over there on Hulu. We're definitely going to be reviewing that as an entire season. So make sure you look out for that as well. But we got a lot of cool stuff coming up here on the channel. Make sure you stay tuned. Don't sleep on any of that goodness. Thanks for watching and sticking around to the end. Much love and peace out.